Russia seems to have run out of good ideas and is now resorting to some questionable tactics. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I thought this was really interesting, and interesting enough that it warranted its own video. This is a statement from senior Ukrainian military officials who are saying that Russian forces are continuing to transfer units from the two northern Kharkiv Oblast from other sectors of the front line, which is really weird. And this is coming directly, actually, from Colonel General Syrski, saying that there's elements, at least from an unspecified number of additional regiments and brigades, as well as being transferred from training grounds to Kharkiv and Volchansk. Now, as they point out, currently the Russian military lacks the forces in Kharkiv to conduct any kind of offensive breakthrough, but it sounds like the Russian forces are trying, but not really succeeding at concentrating a strike group in and around the region. Now, here's where I think things are kind of interesting, right? So we've talked about the fact that when you look at Kharkiv Oblast, you can see Russia's offensive here, or attack, or whatever fizzled out offensive. You can see as we walk back the last 10 days, there's been almost no change to the front lines. And as we walk back even further, you can see that the pace since the 16th, really for about the last 2 weeks, has been almost glacial for Russia. They've really not achieved much of anything. And what makes this kind of bizarre to me is that what you have seen in the last 2 weeks is some Russian advances, right? You look here, in the same 2-week period, you can see that near Umansky, Yasnobrodanivka, Russian forces are making substantive advances. Nataliova, really interesting. Similarly, when you look at places like Ocheretina or Chasiv Yar, you see Russian forces at least making some advances across the front lines. Again, here we are 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, right, you can see incremental Russian progress. And so why then is Russia transferring forces from what look, at least to the lay observer, like a winning strategy and doubling down on a losing one? Particularly in light of two other, for Russia, unfortunate realities. One is that the United States has authorized Ukraine to use their weapons to strike Russian military targets in and around the Kharkiv area. And that is a logical chain of events because Russia started exploiting the loophole that the U.S. had in place that said no strikes in Russian territory with U.S. weapons. So Russia said, great, given that policy, we are going to build a huge invasion force literally less than a kilometer from the Ukrainian border, meaning that the Ukrainians had to watch pretty much powerless as the Russians assembled their invasion force and could only strike once it pushed into Kharkiv. It's one of the reasons why the Ukrainians ultimately were like, there's not even a reason to try to defend these areas because many of our support weapons simply won't be able to be used. Again, would you really want to be a Ukrainian soldier in Pletenivka, knowing that your artillery can't strike anywhere beyond just a few hundred meters from you, right? Nobody wants that, right? You want to know that your friendly weapons are going to be able to hit the enemy kilometers before they reach your location. So given that policy has now changed and that Ukraine can strike into Kharkiv Oblast, again, against military targets, then why would Russia say, oh, let's pull forces off of this front line and move them in, right? And we're going to break that down in a second, but of course, if you feel like you need a strategy shift to get things done in your life, you want to check out Strike Gum. Strike Gum, 90 milligrams caffeine in every single piece, 100 milligrams of alpha GPC, 0 sugar. It is superior to an energy drink in every single way. It's more convenient. You get the equivalent of a Red Bull or an Amp Energy's worth of caffeine, but no sugar, no gross carbonation, and this works out to like $1 a piece, right? Energy drinks, trust me, I've been at a gas station. They're like $5 a pop. It's crazy. You can go to strikegum.com. That's where we have our military discounts and other discounts, or you can check it out on Amazon, especially the 5-pack. We just introduced it, right? For those of you that want to try Strike Gum, maybe, but you're like, hey, I'm not going to buy a single pack on Amazon, right? And I don't need to buy the tray, right? I don't know if I'm going to have that much. The 5-pack is that sweet spot, and you can check it out on Amazon. Thanks to the dozens of people who've left us reviews for the 5-pack on Amazon, because you know that on Amazon there's a lot of poorly made products and made overseas by sketchy manufacturers. And Strike Gum were made here in the USA, right in Denver, partnered with the guys at Liquid Core to make the formulation. And we use only high quality ingredients, natural caffeine, and you can taste it. Like when you taste other caffeine gums, they taste like a chewable medication. That's at least my subjective opinion. This tastes like actual mint gum. So thanks again, guys. Check us out on Amazon. Okay, so why is Russia making these transfers? The answer is because Syrskyi is a defense in depth guy. He's a guy who believes in trading off space, forcing the Russians to advance, but only in areas where there's little tactical advantage. I was looking at some of the casualty estimates, and they actually think that the average number of casualties for Russia in 2024 has been 1,000 soldiers a day, almost 30% higher than last year. So what that indicates is that by essentially having the Russians advance, right, by having them leave defensive positions and exit their trenches and bunkers, it's giving Ukraine opportunities to seize targets, right, to seize the initiative, to attack the Russian forces as they're exposed. And we've seen this in numerous videos. Russian forces advance along a roadway or across a field, and Ukrainian drones just tear them to pieces, right? This attrition-first strategy is making it real dents in Russia's military and their ability to bring in new forces, right? Remember, they can mobilize around 30,000 troops a day. So if they can, or 30,000 troops a month. So if Ukraine can attrit through casualties 30,001 troops, then they are winning the attrition warfare. And that's why I think you're seeing them make these advances. But note these advances, right? Okay, Umansky does have some tactical value, as does Natalyova. But it's only valuable to seize this peninsula, which is basically just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 farm fields. And so you see that in the longer term, it's not clear that there's any kind of strategic Russian gain at work. When you zoom out, you realize the Russians are basically seizing what amounts to the terrain equivalent of an empty cardboard box. And in the process, they're losing thousands of their troops to seize, again, 2 villages that have been destroyed and an empty piece of terrain. Similarly, right, you can see this big expansion in Ocheritina is actually just advancing in a series of fields. The only place where Russia hasn't really closed in on is the actual town of Novoalexandrivka, right? They're not actually closer to this town. They're just expanded into a bunch of open fields. And I think that's what Russia's realizing, is that continuing this offensive effort is going to become more futile as Ukrainian units get better and better equipped due to the influx of U.S. aid. So Russia has a choice. They can continue to send their units on ineffective attacks, incurring high casualties against better and better equipped Ukrainian units who, thanks to the Ukrainian conscription policy changes, are also going to have fewer manpower issues. Or you can at least try something new, right? You can try to pivot towards this Kharkiv Oblast, the last place where Russia made substantive progress towards a real strategic target, which the city of Kharkiv is. Is Russia going to seize the city of Kharkiv? Not with their current troop levels, but that's a problem for future Putin. And to make matters even worse, right, it sounds like the Secretary of State revealed that the U.S. actually makes the same assessment. According to Secretary of State, Ukraine's eastern front has become stable, and the U.S. is tightening surveillance on Russia's naval fleets, right? There's an additional aid package of $6 billion. And he also acknowledged that the Ukraine will become a member of NATO, but not in the near future, which is really interesting and hopefully interpreted correctly by Putin as something that if it's there for Ukraine if it wants it, and it can meet NATO's standards for entry. But that's something that's a long time away because, again, Ukraine needs to win the war first. You cannot join NATO if you don't control your territory. And that's been basically Putin's strategy since 2014. Anyway, guys, that is all I had. Huge thank you to the members of combatvetnews.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really does make a difference. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.